for Passover. Now, you don't have to know a lot about matzah making to know that's like the most un-Jewish thing ever. It's impossible. But that's what makes it a big lie. It's as untrue as something could be, and the more untrue, the more opposite of the truth something is, the harder it is to refute. So today, now the blood libel resonated with things people cared about in the Middle Ages, religious issues, a lot more. Today, the people who make arguments about the Jews, so after that it was Jews invented capitalism, then they invented communism. Whatever were the burning issues of the day, the Jews were blamed for. Today, the criticisms of the Jews are put in the language of human rights. One thing we've heard lately, and unfortunately we have heard this, as Eli has said, from people in Congress, from people in the parliaments of Europe, that Israel is spreading disease, one of the most ancient blood libels possible, dug up from the Middle Ages, by not providing vaccines to the Palestinian Authority. Now, it turns out that under international law, Israel has no obligation for the Palestinians. It's black-letter international law. And anyway, Israel just offered 700,000 vaccines to the Palestinians. The Palestinians said, no, we don't want them. We think they're no good. And so South Korea took them instead. In other words, it was a completely made-up libel. Another libel, Israel's being accused of being an apartheid state. Apartheid is an international crime. So people say, we don't like the Jews, we have no problem with the Jews, we just don't like their apartheid. In Israel, there is not a single public facility that is separated between Jews and Arabs. You have Arabs who are members of the government, Arabs in the Supreme Court. There is not a single legal distinction between Jews and Arabs in terms of their rights. So why say apartheid state? It completely mocks the history and insults the history of blacks in South Africa. Because first of all, it's the opposite of the truth, making it a big lie. And it resonates with the racial justice concerns that people are very sensitive about. So like a classic blood libel, it frames the criticism of the Jews in terms of what people are most sensitive about today. So, of course, no one comes and says, I'm just against the Jews. They come in the language of human rights. But you need to see beneath those arguments and see when those arguments are completely made up or applying standards to Israel that don't apply to any other country. That itself is another form of anti-Semitism. So we're going to see in the coming months, unfortunately, the United States has made clear that it wants to open up a consulate to the Palestinians in Jerusalem. Now, forget about what the US law says about this. Under international law, there is you cannot have a consulate in the same city as you have an embassy, a consulate in one city representing to an enemy country. This is yet another way. Where does the United States, ask yourself, where does the United States have a consulate in the same city that it has an embassy representing to a hostile foreign power? There's no example. And when you treat Israel by a standard that you don't apply to anyone else, that's the definition of anti-Semitism.
Thank you, Eugene. So, David, you just completed a stint in the Middle East. You were a special assistant to the United States ambassador to Israel, our good friend David Friedman, who was a phenomenal diplomat. David, you're in the heart of everything, Abraham Accords and beyond. How can you compare and contrast the current Biden administration attitude towards the Middle East with the attitude that you experienced working under President Trump?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Yitz. And it's really a tremendous honor to be here at CPAC and to be on this stage. I think it's worth recalling what the Trump administration did to show that it is the most pro-Israel administration ever, and really there is no comparison to the current administration. So if you remember back in December of 2017, it was actually President Trump, after Republican and Democrat presidents promised to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, it was actually President Trump who delivered on that promise.
Right.
He then, in May 14th, 2018, which actually coincided with the 70th anniversary of the creation of the modern state of Israel, moved our embassy to Jerusalem. He then recognized Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights, which is an extremely important territory in Israel's north, and also the historic connection of the Jewish people to the Golan Heights goes back many, many years. He then made an announcement that Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria, in fact, one of the communities I believe that Eugene even lives in, is not in violation of international law. and also, again, reaffirming the historic right of the Jewish people to live throughout the land of Israel. He cut off funding to the Palestinians because they continued their hostility towards Israel. He also stood up for America's sovereignty at international institutions like the United Nations, which not only is anti-American, but is anti-Israel. Right. And you compare all of these decisions and many, many more, which no other administration ever had done in the past, to what the current administration is doing. And the current administration is seeking to become more hostile to Israel. And they want to empower the Iranian regime in Tehran through renegotiating and re-entering a disastrous deal that, sort of, to Ellie's point, it's not even the fact that they want to re-enter the deal. It's the fact that the deal itself, even if Iran follows the deal, paves Iran's path to an arsenal of nuclear weapons. At the same time, they've restored funding to the Palestinians. They've restored funding to the anti-Israel bodies at the United Nations. They continue to make false moral equivalence between Israel and terrorist organizations like Hamas that recently fired over 4,000 rockets targeting Israeli civilians. They want to appease the Palestinian leadership, trying to resurrect the false notion that failing to solve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is somehow the real cause for instability in the Middle East, when in fact, as we said before, it's the Iranian regime. So you can go down the line. And so one of the things I would encourage cpac attendees to do is to continue to be vocal, but be in touch with your member of Congress, because this is a very, very important issue. A strong and secure Israel is inherently in U.S. national security interests, and a strong U.S.-Israel relationship helps protect us here at home. And so I would encourage all of you that when you're speaking with your members of Congress, you encourage them to not only be vocal, but to take real initiative, to stand up for the pro-Israel policies of the Trump administration and counter what's coming and what has already occurred from the Biden administration to undermine all of the pro-Israel policies of the last 4 years.
Excellent. And David, I love how you brought it back to practical action items that we all here at cpac can do. cpac is about solutions. It's about taking action. That was fantastic. Ellie, what are some practical actions that you think people here can take to address the issues you brought up?
It's, I just wrote an op-ed in Newsweek which made left-wing blue checkmark Twitter go crazy. They had like a whole meltdown on Twitter. But in this op-ed, I wrote about the fact that I believe the time has come for the United States president, for the White House, to appoint an anti-Semitism czar. And what the anti-Semitism czar would do is bring the resources of the federal government, take a whole-of-government approach to really combating domestic anti-Semitism. So when I was in office, I was the envoy in the State Department, and our mandate was exclusively foreign anti-Semitism, international anti-Semitism. And I think it's time, given what we're seeing in the halls of Congress with the Squad and the radical leftists and also Jews being attacked on the streets, we need our own anti-Semitism czar right here in the United States.
Excellent, thank you. Eugene, we can't all be international law experts like you, but what can rank and file cpac attendees, the grassroots, what can we do to reinforce Israel's standing?
So on the question of the current administration attempting to deny the Jewish people's historic and unbroken relationship with their holy city of Jerusalem by entertaining Palestinian claims to sovereignty in Jerusalem through the opening of a consulate, you again need to be in touch with your congressmen, with your senators in particular, and make clear this is something that needs to get blocked up. Funding for this cannot proceed. This is a fundamental issue of our standing with the Jewish people in the historic birthplace of the Judeo-Christian tradition.
Thank you. So a lot of this conversation is about Israel and Israel's standing. Putting that aside, here in the United States, American Jews have been attacked in the streets. Just last week, there was a rabbi in Boston who was stabbed in a clearly anti-Semitic attack. In our closing minutes, maybe David, we'll start with you. What can be done? This is a serious matter.
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, I think it's really important that in addition to what Ellie said, we have to pressure members of Congress to be vocal about condemning the anti-Semitism that occurs in the halls of Congress. And whether that's Omar and Tlaib, it's interesting, a couple weeks ago, Omar compared the United States to terrorist organizations like the Taliban and like Hamas, claiming that all of us have been committing genocide or war crimes. And it was such a disgusting and reprehensible remark. And the failure of the Democrat leadership to unequivocally condemn her, which is not the first time, but even when they claimed to issue a press release, Pelosi went on one of the Sunday shows and was asked, why did you condemn her? And Pelosi said, oh, no. And she completely walked it back. They're so scared of actually holding accountable those who are spewing anti-Semitism and hatred. So it's really important that we speak out, but also it's worth contrasting that with Representative Kevin McCarthy, who leads the Republicans in the House. And what he has said is that people like Omar and Tlaib, they won't have committee assignments if the Republicans take the majority in 2022. And so we should be demanding that people like Omar and Tlaib be removed from their committee assignments. Right. And also, I think it comes back to the importance of properly defining what is anti-Semitism. There's something called the IRA definition and its contemporary examples, which goes into grave detail. It's actually an internationally recognized definition. It's something actually that Ellie worked on to promote in her office at the State Department, encouraging other countries to adopt this definition, because if we don't have a clear and bold and strong definition of what is anti-Semitism, how do you properly combat it? How do you fight it? So one of the other things I would encourage you all to do is tell your member of Congress to encourage the executive branch to formally adopt the IRA definition and its contemporary examples in every aspect of the U.S. government, not only abroad, but also domestically, and also at the state level. We have 50 states. There's a lot of things that can be done at the states. We shouldn't forget that we have a 10th Amendment, and not everything needs to be so concentrated back in Washington, D.C. and in the swamp. So the more that we can do to define anti-Semitism, to call out those who are anti-Semites, the better we will be.
Yes, I also want to mention, we need, I know this audience does, but we need to support our law enforcement. We need to support our police. And I'll tell you why. Exactly right. When there was this Palestinian flag-waving mob that came to 47th Street, which is the jewelry district in New York, known to be a very Jewish location, and they threw an incendiary device into the Jewish people walking in the street. Apparently, NYPD did not do the most that they could do to arrest the perpetrators that were there on the scene. Now, we've seen this happen in New York over and again lately. I can tell you as a former New Yorker that under the Bloomberg and Giuliani administrations, NYPD was empowered and they made those arrests. The police in this country feel disempowered. They don't feel that when they see a hate crime taking place that they can make arrests, and we need to support our police officers and let them know, you see a hate crime, please make those arrests.
Excellent, thank you. Excellent. Well, thank you all for your very valuable comments. Thank you all for your support and your love. This is something that we appreciate. And God bless you and God bless America. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, cpac.
All right, welcome everybody. We are in Dallas, Texas, cpac Uncanceled 2021, where President Donald J. Trump will be speaking here at 3:30 p.m. Central Time today. So you're going to want to stay tuned to RSBN and continue watching to watch President Trump speak here shortly. First, I would like to thank Mike Lindell for all of his help today and being a real patriot, the way that you can support him and his endeavors to go and fight a lot of these big tech companies that are going after him. The way you can support him is you can go to mypillow.com. And if you go to mypillow.com and choose whatever product you want to get, towels or pillows, you can use promo code RSBN to get up to 66% off. You can also go to his other website, which is called mystore.com, and it is a competitor towards Amazon. And Amazon loves to go after the little guy. They love to stomp all over you. They are the epitome of evil towards the left. They do not like conservatives. And if you want to help Mike Lindell fight against them, you can go to mystore.com and use code RSBN to get up to 66% off of those products as well.
Is America prepared to deal with the pandemic and addiction caused by the opioid crisis? please welcome your panel. From Victoria's Voice Foundation, Jackie Siegel. From Deason Capital Services, LLC, Doug Deason. Former Florida Attorney General, Pam Bondi. And your host, from the American Conservative Union Foundation, Mercedes Schlapp.
Good morning, cpac. Okay, so there must be a really special guest coming today. I wonder who it is, because people are sitting down and getting their seats. But what we first want to talk about, and I know this is a very tough subject, but it's an important subject to address because it's something that I think has destroyed so many lives and so many communities. But there are great leaders in this area who have done so much to help others with opioid addiction and drug addiction. And they're here on our stage. And so let's give a warm welcome to all three of our wonderful panelists, Jackie, Doug, and of course, Pam Bondi. So, Jackie, I want to start with you. She's the Queen of Versailles, and if you haven't seen that show, you must. And there's the other show, which is the other one, Under the Deck?
Well, I've been on Below Deck and stuff. But,
there you go, Below the Deck. And Jackie is just remarkable, and it's been wonderful to get to know her. But you also started Victoria's Voice Foundation. Talk to us how you started this foundation, why you did it, and what's the message that you are sharing with others across the nation to stop opioid addiction?
Well, in my life, I never imagined that my life would be devoted to saving lives through our foundation, Victoria's Voice. We always donated to many, many charities. But unfortunately, my husband and I, and he owns Westgate Resorts, our daughter, 18 years old, died of a drug overdose right beneath our nose. We didn't even know she was on drugs. And part of our foundation is educating people about opening your eyes, because this can happen to you too. And especially with the COVID lockdown, the deaths, drug overdoses, abuse is up 60% from last year, because with the COVID lockdowns, it's creating the worst environment possible for our youth to be isolated. It leads to depression, it can lead to mental illness, and even out of boredom, kids can experiment. But yeah, so it's now more than ever to raise the awareness about, there's so much to talk about.
Oh yes, Pam, jump in.
So this is a very humble woman. For a family who has so much, they took a horrible tragedy and they give back so much. So this doesn't have to happen to another family. So thank you for everything you do. And she's one of the kindest women I know too.
We also have books here that we're giving to everyone who is interested in this subject. It's my daughter's diary, and fully exposes what goes through the teenagers' minds. And we all have families or grandchildren, and we're planning a future generation, but that's what we want to save, our future generation.
Jackie, that's really remarkable, the work you're doing. And Pam, let me turn to you, and then we're going to do the blondes first. Sorry, Doug. But 2 in 3 adults are treated for opioid addiction, and they first started using the drug younger than the age of 25. Now, you were the Attorney General in Florida. What did you all have to do? And on the President Trump's opioid commission, because this was something that was very important for President Trump. Talk to us about what you did in Florida when you were Attorney General, but also what you all were able to accomplish during the Trump administration in terms of the opioids commission.
When I took office, before I took office, I was campaigning all over the state of Florida, and parents were coming up to me, handing me high school pictures of their kids who are now dead. And then when I became AG, I framed those pictures in my office as my inspiration to stop the opioid abuse in Florida. Of the top 100 doctors, these call themselves doctors, they're criminals, who prescribed oxycodone, the top 100 in the country, 98 of them lived in Florida. And we fought so hard to pass that legislation. And I was down on the floor because I wanted it to be unanimous. I was so mad at anyway that it hadn't been passed before. And now, or at least a few years ago, none of them lived in Florida anymore. So that's, but it's still, it's ongoing. And then I was blessed to, when I was Attorney General, to set on President Trump's opioid commission. And now I'm with also America First Policy Institute, and we're continuing the great policies that President Trump started while in office. But, you know, that was a bipartisan commission, and we did so much good working together to try to combat this around our country. But Doug can talk more about it. But, you know, now we have fentanyl, we have heroin, and it just continues on. And my biggest plea would be if you have a child, a grandchild, a family member, and you know, what's the drug of choice with college kids now? Adderall or Xanax, because they think it helps them study. Do not let anyone buy that on the street because they're lacing it with fentanyl. And in St. Pete, in 3 days, 5 young men overdosed because they thought they were buying, I can't remember if it's Adderall or Xanax, and it was laced with fentanyl and they didn't know it. So that's what we're up against in this world now.
Doug, let's turn to you. You are a champion for criminal justice reform. I know it's an issue that's dear to your heart, but we also know that there are many of those individuals who are addicted, who end up in jail, and they're not getting the treatment that they need. What do we need to do to make sure that we have the right programs in place so that these individuals can have a second chance?
Well, we work at Right on Crime, which is part of Texas Public Policy Foundation, which was chaired for the longest time by our mutual friend Brooke Rollins, and they started Right on Crime, and we're expanding Right on Crime now to work in the states. We got distracted for 4 years by the Trump administration and advised Jared on criminal justice reform, and ended up advising and working on the First Step Act, which was a great bill. But at the state levels, we work in Texas, Oklahoma, Kentucky, Tennessee, Arizona, Florida with Governor DeSantis. I'm on an advisory panel for him. And what we're trying to do is get, number one, have diversion programs and diversion courts, which Pam can talk about later, to keep people out of the system. So most people who go to jail or go to prison have either mental health issues or drug and alcohol addiction. So putting them in jail, putting them in prison, there's nothing there that's going to help. You're just going to exacerbate the problem, and then they're going to come out, they're going to be addicted, they're going to have the same issues. They probably got drugs and or alcohol while they're in jail or in prison, and they're going to go right back into the same circles. So what we try to do is steer them away from, or teach them skills, get them therapy, and teach them how to avoid going back to the same circles.
You know, we have, through our program, we've already developed an educational video series that's in 15-minute segments. And I would love to send that to you to possibly bring in for these criminals. And it's not just education about how bad drugs are and the risks of buying something off the street that's laced with fentanyl and all that, but it has life stories of how it ruins people's lives and how they've come back. And then we also ended up with the final few videos is coping skills. Like how, once I'm off of drugs, what do I do next? And how to look for help and get support. So I would love to send this to you, and we would love to bring this program nationwide. We thank you, Governor Noem, South Dakota. She's taking in our program. She's the most amazing woman in the world for the whole state. And we also are in Nevada, in Clark County, and 5 schools there, and also in Seminole County with the sheriffs, Sheriff Dennis Lima. I don't know if you know him, but he's helping us, and I'm sure you'll be hearing from him eventually because we want to bring this video series into the criminal justice system.
That's an excellent idea. Jackie, is the sheriff the Orlando sheriff, the one we met?
Sheriff Dennis Lima.
Okay, so this is what President Trump would say he's central casting, okay? He like looks like tough sheriff, let me tell you. Okay, but Jackie, let me ask you real quick. On the Narcan, now this is the antidote that would help on the opioid overdose. Is this something that you all feel very strongly about, that we need to ensure that first responders have this? Share with
a lot of people, actually we never heard of Narcan, but Narcan is kind of an antidote if someone's like already not breathing from an opioid. You can administer it through the nose. It's kind of like a Nazareth drug, or like if someone gets bit by a snake, you get anti-venom. And had the first responders, when they found Victoria, my daughter, had Narcan, she would have had a second chance in life. And there was no Narcan there. So my husband and I, when we were educated on this, we went up to Washington, D.C. and helped pass legislation for the CARA Act, which is a very comprehensive act, but part of it was getting the Narcan to be available for all the first responders in the country.
Pam, what we are seeing at the border is not only a humanitarian crisis, but there's a drug crisis happening. Can you walk us through what you've learned and what's happening down there?
Yes, Mercy. And when, we've talked about all these different drugs, but especially the fentanyl, because that's the deadliest. It only takes a few grains, like if you think of grains of salt, to kill you. And a vial half an inch big could kill a room of people. And what they're doing, this junk is made in China. They're sending it to Mexico, and it's coming right across the border. And when President Trump was in office, he was doing a great job, as we all know. That wall is about keeping drugs and human traffickers out of our country. And I don't share publicly many private conversations with the president, but he called me a couple months ago. It was in the morning, and something was going on at the border, and he said to me, "Can you believe all the drugs that are coming into our country now across that border?" And that's why we need the wall. As a prosecutor,
and I was
traffickers, the smugglers, but that's how it's getting into our country, and that's how it's killing our kids in our country. So we have to be so vigilant about that. And not only that, Jackie and I were talking, they're lacing marijuana now with fentanyl. And people say, well, wait, they don't want to kill you. No, but they want to get you so addicted so fast that your life is over. And I was telling Doug backstage, when I was a prosecutor, I prosecuted a World Series baseball player. He traded his World Series ring for one piece of crack. If that doesn't tell you the power of addiction, and he gave up on himself. But that's why everything Doug's doing too is so very important.
I was wondering, you were talking about the border, all the drugs coming across the border. What about, I heard recently that there is talk with this administration that they want to take away our border patrol and change it to social workers at the border. Is that true? And basically,
but this administration, you never know, because they say don't come, but then they're taking everything away that worked to strengthen our border. So this is a hypocritical administration that has done all the work that President Trump was able to control the border, and that is just, I think, a disgrace for our nation and for our families.
So Mercy, Texas historically, we do a biennium budget, so 2-year budgets, and we've spent $830 million. And Dan Patrick talks about this. Governor Abbott talks about it. $830 million to protect our border, which is not the state's job. And so historically, over the last few years, it's $830 every 2 years. So $415 per year, $1 million. Imagine all the other things we could do with that. We just jumped it up to $1.2 billion in the latest budget. So Texas alone is paying $1.2 billion to protect our border, to keep those drugs out. We're seeing more fentanyl than ever. And then, of course, all the red states are sending down National Guard and national troops, which we're so appreciative of. Florida, Ron DeSantis, Governor Bill Lee. Oklahoma, Kristi Noem in South Dakota, and we're just creating our own militia to go down and guard the border because this administration won't do it. And then why won't they do it? Because it was a Trump program. It's that simple. It was perfectly logical. It was working, but it was Trump, and so they killed it.
Doug, I want to piggyback on that. China, why is it such a huge threat when it comes to fentanyl?
Well, because they produce so much of it, and they send it to Mexico specifically to flood the United States. And it's a vicious cycle that they get people in, and they're doing it on purpose. This is not something that they're trying to make money off of. They're trying to destroy our country and create the addiction, create the problems. You know, it's just part of an overall plan, one small part of it.
And it's so cheap. That's it. It's so cheap. They get it to Mexico. Now it's coming in here. It's huge business, and they have
Through the post office, too.
through the post office. But really, you know, they're paying mules, or, you know, people to come into our country, legal or illegally, and bring this stuff in. And it's just so deadly. And again, the drug dealers are the ones who are profiting off this like never before.
I tell you that fentanyl is the worst thing ever. I mean, heroin is bad, but heroin mixed with fentanyl is a death sentence. And all it takes is that one lethal dose. And, oh, go ahead.
Just to clarify something, if you're in the hospital and you get a fentanyl patch after surgery, that's completely different. That's medical fentanyl. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about here today.
Right, exactly. And thanks for clearing that up, because I had, like, if someone has surgery or cancer, they do need the treatment, but it's under doctor supervision. It's just like marijuana. If you get it legally and it's controlled, there's not going to be laced with fentanyl. I was asked to give a speech up in Rochester, New York, when my book came out, Victoria's Voice, and the day before I got there, there was a batch of marijuana that was laced with fentanyl, and 7 people died before I was able to get up there and warn them.
Well, Jackie, you talked about Governor Noem. You talked about the work that you all are doing, or talk about the work that you're doing in impacting the states. As we know, there's states like West Virginia, there's states like New Hampshire who have been hit really hard with the opioids crisis, destroying families. Let me ask you, what are you all doing to help influence and impact the state legislature in those areas?
Well, we're doing a lot of public service announcements. We're doing a lot of networking. We also are forming the Victory Clubs, which is an incentive program for kids between 15 and 24 to not do drugs by giving them benefits such as discounts on car insurance and like restaurants and movies and things like that, which we're all working on right now. And also to form a support group, which we have a network of kids who want to be drug-free, because peers helping peers is what really sells. I mean, we could talk till we're blue in the face, but they're going to want to listen to someone their own age.
Pam, pharmaceutical companies, McKinsey Consulting, they're involved in all these settlements. I think not enough money for these high volume users. What they do is that they've promoted opioids to high volume users. What's the liability there? And should they pay?
Absolutely. I filed the lawsuit against him in Florida when I was Attorney General, and now Ashley Moody is doing a great job continuing with that in Florida, that lawsuit. But, you know, we were looking at documents that our legal team were able to get, and it truly looked like a playbook to commit murder. You know, how to market it, how to sell it, how to get people to buy more. And frankly, I went after some doctors publicly in Florida who were, for minor surgery, still prescribing 30 oxycodone pills. There's no reason for that. Zero. If someone needs it, give them 10 pills. But that's how people are getting so addicted to this. But yeah, those lawsuits are still ongoing. They're liable, and they realize that. I think they're very scared right now, a lot of companies.
Doug, your thoughts just in general of where you think our nation is going. Is the problem going to get worse, the opioids problem, or do you think we're going to be moving in the right direction?
I think we're slowly but surely moving in the right direction. Number one, there are a lot more restrictions. There are scores. I forget what they call them, but each person has a score, and if they're getting hydrocodone, tramadol, all these different drugs that, you know, you can mix a cocktail. A lot of these deaths are accidental because they've stacked different drugs and they didn't realize that they interact and how they interact. And we've seen that. I've seen that. I personally believe that every household should have Narcan so that just in case something happens, they can, you know, there are no bad side effects. So there's nothing wrong with Narcan. and people seem to be scared of it sometimes. But I think that, plus we're training, we're getting more and more training and preparation in prisons so people come out and they're not going to get right back into that cycle. If we can stop that, that will help a lot.
I'd like to get final thoughts from each of you. Let's start with you, Pam. What's your message to our audience, to those watching on our live streaming, in terms of the message of hope or the message of those parents?
You know, that's what happened to the Seagulls. So just watch everything they're doing, talk to them, have open dialogues with them, because it's so important for our future. They are our future. I mean, that's what's so important for our country right now. And as far as conservatives, we're going to keep fighting. We're going to come back stronger than ever.
Amen. Doug.
Okay, I just want to say real quick that what we're talking about here is we're treating the symptoms of a broken society, and that's what I do. I spend most of my time on criminal justice reform in different states, but the real issue is in 1964, a Texan, Lyndon Baines Johnson, declared war on poverty. It was really the war on family and on God. And if we can get families back together, in 1964, 22% of black babies were born out of wedlock. In 2019, it was 76%. You can't tell me that that helps. That was a war on family, and we've got to get families back and make those important and get God back into the system and into our society.
Jackie, you have the last word.
Thank you, and thank you for having me today. I really want to express to parents the most important thing is to not miss the warning signs, the signs of your child's changing their behaviors. We do have our book, Victoria's Voice, and all the warning signs are in our book. I'm giving it for free over, I think it's at booth 439, if anyone here wants that or they want to give it to their teenagers. Also, it's on Amazon. So I know we're out of time, but if you can look for the warning signs there.
Well, I just want to say thank you, all of you. You are all fighters. You are all activists. And let me tell you something. These are our soldiers in this war on family and God, and they are going to stand up strong to make sure we protect our family and God and our children. So God bless you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This is our warrior, too, right here. Thank you, Mercedes.
We are at cpac 2021 here in Dallas, Texas, where President Trump will be speaking shortly. He will be speaking at 3:30 p.m. Central Time, so not too far from now. We have a lot of people here starting to come in to Dallas CPAC. A lot of people. We had a lot of really good interviews today, yesterday, and the day before. President Trump, though, will be headlining today's CPAC, speaking at 3:30 p.m. Central Time. I'd first like to thank all of our viewers for tuning in today. We appreciate all of you guys and all of what you do for us, because you guys are the reason that we are able to be here. The reason we can be here is because of your donations, because of your support. And if you would like to continually support us, you can go to rsbnetwork.com/donate. That is rsbnetwork.com/donate. You can also donate by mail as well. You can donate to 1550 Opelika Road, spelled Opelika, 1550 Opelika Road, Suite 6, Box 344, Auburn, Alabama, 36830. You can also, if you would like to, donate in the YouTube live chat as well. But keep in mind that YouTube takes 30% of your donations that you put in the live chat, and YouTube is always not the nicest to us. Sometimes we're not on air from YouTube. They throw us off. So if you don't want that 30% going to YouTube, I encourage you all to donate either by mail or through our website at rsbnetwork.com/donate. Be sure to subscribe to us on Twitter as well at RSB Network. That is RSB Network on Twitter and Getter as well. Be sure to subscribe to us and follow us on YouTube, Getter, and Twitter to keep updated with all of the news, all of the right side news, where we're going to be, when President Trump is going to be speaking, so that we are able to get that message out to you. Should you not get a notification from YouTube if we are, for some reason, not allowed to post videos, as we were not allowed to a couple of days ago. So I encourage you all stay updated with us. Follow us on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, on Rumble, on YouTube. We have more speakers now.
Texas Attorney General Ken.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Isn't it great to have a president that cares about the border? I wasn't going to do this, but I'm going to tell, are you guys okay if I tell a Donald Trump story before I start? I won't make my speech any longer. So I had been around him one other time, and he was coming into Texas for the Santa Fe shooting, flew into the Air Force Base close to Houston, Ellington Air Force Base, got off the plane, our governor greeted him, and then Dan Patrick, the lieutenant governor, and Ted Cruz and I spoke to President Trump just for a few minutes, and he immediately stopped everybody. He said, Ken, what am I going to do about Obamacare? What am I going to do about DACA? I don't want to defend those. We're defending them right now. I don't want to defend them. What do I do? And I tried to speak, and then somebody kind of interrupted, and we didn't finish the conversation. So then the president comes back to me again. He says, Ken, what am I going to do? I don't want to defend this stuff. I don't want to defend Obamacare. I don't want to defend DACA. And I tried to talk again, and somebody else started talking, and he finally said, Ken, I want you to go sit in the limousine right now. Okay. I mean, so I walked over to the limousine, and I asked the Secret Service, where do you want me? And they sat me in the chair that I knew was going to be next to the president. Ended up spending the day with them. And at the end of the day, he said, Ken, I want you to do me a favor. He goes, I want you to call my Solicitor General. Don't call the Attorney General. Call my Solicitor General. I want you to tell him that I don't want to defend these cases. And I said, well, Mr. President, I don't think you understand. I don't represent you. I'm suing you. Like, I'm on the other side. He goes, I don't care. He goes, make sure you tell Noel Francisco, the Solicitor General, that I like him, and I want you to report back to me. I said, well, Mr. President, I don't know how to call you. So he says to his advanced guy, and he says, hey, make sure he can get a hold of me. I said, okay. So I called the Solicitor General, just like he instructed. I said, Noel, I know you don't know me very well. You understand we think that DACA and Obamacare are unconstitutional. Would you understand if the president talked to me and he wanted me to tell you not to defend those cases, but he wanted me to tell you that he really likes you? And I said, I know this is very awkward because I'm suing you, but I said, I think you should just know. And he goes, okay, okay. And he said, and then I said, by the way, I'm supposed to report back to the president. And he said, well, can you call somebody else, like the White House counsel? I said, I'm calling the president. So oddly enough, when they had to file their answers to both these cases back-to-back days, they switched sides and they stuck with Texas. So why is that an important story? Because that type of leadership, where he was being advised by the Attorney General, his White House counsel, Solicitor General not to do something, and yet, against all of that, he stood next to us, knowing what the right thing to do was. And I think that's the kind of leadership that we're all looking for. Is that not right? By the way, Texas has a few heroes too. Have any of y'all ever heard of Davy Crockett? So Davy Crockett was running for Congress in Tennessee, and I guess he thought he might lose. So he told his constituents, not yet to be, y'all can go to hell, I'm going to Texas. And he came to Texas, and he was one of those guys at the Alamo fighting for the freedom of the Texans. We became our own independent state, country, because of that type of spirit. And then, of course, we have our founders, Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin and John Adams, who wrote the Declaration of Independence, which said that it wasn't the government granting us our rights. Our rights come from our Creator. They're inalienable. We don't ask for them. They are given to us by our Creator. And I want you to know, in the few minutes that I have left, that Texas is in that fight because we believe that. We believe in what our founders said, not because they said it, because it's true. We believe in what our founders of our state said, not because they said it, because it's true. And so we're in the fight. You might have noticed we sued Obama 27 times in my first 2 years of office. And that was over 27 months. We've already sued Joe Biden 11 times in like 6 months. And I have a feeling, unfortunately, we're not done. 5 of those over immigration. And it's shocking to me, for those who have not been to the border yet, to see what is happening there, to see all of these policies that were instituted that were to overcome what Obama had done, that were working, from building the wall to the Stay in Mexico program to no more catch and release. All of these things ended, and these are what we're suing Biden over right now, because he's clearly not following federal law. And so far, we've only had 1 case decided. We're 1-0. So we're off to a good start. That fight, unfortunately, will be an everyday fight. The second thing that Texas is fighting is big tech. And the reason we're fighting big tech is because we know that those companies have tremendous power over our speech, over the narrative, over what we buy, what we think. They're monopolistic. We've already sued Google. We're already part of a Facebook lawsuit. And of course, Twitter sued us when we started investigating them over deplatforming President Trump. We will continue that fight as well. And finally, no more important issue than election integrity. For those of you who were not aware, Texas was involved in 12 lawsuits before the election. We didn't wait till after the election. We fought them before the election. We had 12 lawsuits, state court, federal court, all about mail-in ballots, trying to change our state laws. And I told my team, you can't lose a single lawsuit. You have to win 12, because if they win 1 lawsuit, we will lose Texas. It was in Harris County, which is Houston. It was in Austin. It was in San Antonio. And we fought and we fought and we fought, and we went 12-0. Thank you. Thank you. And why does that matter? It matters because if you look at the election results from 4 years ago, Georgia and Texas were almost exactly the same. The difference, we fought 12 lawsuits. They signed consent decrees allowing mail-in ballots, drop boxes, no signature verification, total capitulation. And so then we followed that up. Of course, you might remember Texas sued 4 states over what happened in the election, and we were told by a Supreme Court that somehow, even though it's the only place we could file as a state versus a state, that we had no standing. Amazing. But our fight is not done, and when people tell you there is no election fraud, let me just tell you, my office right now has 511 counts in court because of COVID, waiting to be heard. We have another 386 that we're investigating. If you add those together, that's more election fraud than my office has prosecuted since it started investigating election fraud years and years ago. So do not believe the narrative, because in Texas, we are going to fight election fraud. Now, I know Gerald Ford may not have been our favorite Republican president, but one of the things he did say was that any government that can give you everything you want can take away everything you have. And so we in Texas are committed to the fight, whether we're joining others or whether we're leading, we will be like Davy Crockett. We will be like Thomas Jefferson. We know where the fight is, and I can promise you this, the state of Texas, my office, is going to continue to fight with the people that are sitting right here because we are the country that everybody else looks to for that freedom, and we cannot lose this fight. This is our time. God bless cpac, and God bless this great state and this great country. Thank you all very much.
Dallas. We are in Dallas, Texas for cpac 2021 uncanceled. That is what we are about today. President Donald J. Trump, the 45th President of the United States, will speak here at 3:30 p.m. Central Time. Stay tuned on Right Side Broadcasting Network to watch this. You can watch this via YouTube or Rumble or through the app. So be sure to stay tuned in to listen to the president speak. I'd like to thank Mr. Mike Lindell today for his patriotism and for all of his support of Right Side Broadcasting Network. He has done so much for this company. I would like to thank him and let all of you know that this man is a patriot and that he is fighting for us. He is fighting for you. The way that you can fight for him and support him back, you can go to mypillow.com and use promo code RSBN to get 66% off at checkout. That is RSBN to get up to 66% off at checkout.
Union, Karen Walters.
Good morning, everybody. Are you enjoying the last day of cpac? I just wanted to say a couple of quick reminders. Please don't forget to vote in the straw poll. That ends at noon, so this is your last opportunity to make your voice heard. You can do that in the cpac app. And also, don't forget to vote in the silent auction, which you can also do in the cpac app. That ends at 3:30. And then the last call for the exhibit hall, that is open until 4, but make sure you go there and check out all the great sponsors and exhibitors that we have. And thanks again for being here.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem.
Good morning. How are you? It's good to see all of you. You know, you learn the most interesting things at cpac, don't you? How many of you have learned something so far this conference? Me too. Whenever I come, I get involved. Oh, thank you. You're so sweet. You're going to be, oh, okay. Well, I don't need to give a speech. Let's just stand. I'm just kidding. Okay, throw the speech out the window. You learn the most interesting things here at cpac. You know, you get to have good conservative discussions, meet incredible people. What you don't learn is that behind stage, like Sid Miller was just teaching me how to use a tie pin as a different type of a pin anywhere on your clothes. Mike Lindell has the best tips for hairspray. Did you know that? The guy, like, and eye drops, and then he was, I mean, all kinds of tips from him. So if you get the chance to meet him, ask him for life hacks, because that guy is hooked up, and he's got it all in a pocket or in a pillow somewhere. Yeah. Every time I see him, I get a pillow, and I go, Mike, is this your pillow, or is this my pillow? Every time. I'm sure he's so sick of me. Or I say, let me be frank. Let me be frank with you, Mike. So I need to work on my humor maybe a little bit more. But listen, the only reason that I'm here today to visit with all of you is because I have a very big announcement to share with all of you. I do. I have a new job. Now, most people know that I've done a lot of different things in my life. You know, I've been a farmer and a rancher. Probably what you don't know is I used to do carpet cleaning telemarketing. I used to sell carpet cleaning over the phone. I used to sell vacuum cleaners. I was a home health nurse. I was a grocery store checkout girl. What else did I do? I was a waitress. I loved that job, actually. That was great. I've done a lot of things. I've also been in Congress, a legislator, a leader, and now I'm governor. But I think I potentially just got the most important job that I've ever had in my entire life. And that is that I am a new grandma. Yeah. I have officially become obnoxious. Anytime somebody says something, I'm like, oh, have you seen pictures of her? Well, I saw the ones you posted yesterday. Yes, but she's changed. She's changed. She looks different today. Her name is Adeline West Peters, and she is perfect. Yes, and I call her Miss Addie, and she calls me whatever she wants to call me because I love her so much. But honestly, listen, I hate the world that we are giving her. And so I'm here to ask you for help. I need you to help me save America. And that is literally what's happening right now. When I first got elected to Congress, I knew that when I walked into the House of Representatives, which is where I got elected as a farmer and a rancher to represent South Dakota, I knew after discussions with many members that I was serving with people who believed in socialist principles, who believed in Marxist principles. They would have never said it publicly. And look at how dramatically that has changed today. Look at how dramatically they have embraced those policies. They give press conferences on it. So I'm here just to have a candid conversation with all of you about what is at stake. I look at Joe Biden's America and I don't recognize the country that I grew up in. I do not recognize the country that I grew up in. We see crime and hate. We see division, lawlessness. It's completely unacceptable. And I need all of you to join the team and to do more than what you're doing. You're doing a lot just by being here and embracing conservative principles. But I need you engaged to do more. I grew up in a world where people were proud to have jobs. They got up every morning and wanted to go to work. We prayed in school when I went to school. We looked at birth certificates and never had a debate over what the person's sex was. We just didn't. We respected our flag, we protected it, and we all stood for the national anthem. And that's not the country that we're giving to little Miss Addie today. You know, I was thinking about how special it was where I grew up. Everybody knows I grew up on a farm and ranch. I had the most incredible parents in the world. They were not perfect, and they were tough. My mom, I think, spent most of her life just trying to keep us alive so we could keep up with Dad, because my dad was a go-getter. He was the kind of guy that woke us up every morning by yelling up the stairs, "Get up, more people die in bed than anywhere else." And so we got up, and I always used to, and then he would send us to bed, and he would say, "Sleep fast." And I remember being like a 10-year-old going, how do I sleep fast? I don't know what that means. But he was a cowboy, and he was incredibly tough, but he taught us life lessons that made us problem solvers. He gave us impossible things to do. And I was thinking the other day about this one story, if you'll just indulge me for a minute. But it was when my brother and I were real young. It was during calving season. You're going to get a real good farm story here. Sorry. Billy's going to love it. I don't know if anybody else will. It's during calving season, and cows, when they have babies, get fevers. They don't feel very good. I mean, how many women in the room know it's a little rough to give birth? Well, cows get fevers, and they don't feel good, and they don't like their calves. And we had a cow that wasn't letting her calf suck, and Dad sent me and my brother Rob over to get her in the barn, put her in a chute, and make sure that that baby could suck, could drink. And so We went over there, and with my dad, failure was not an option. It had rained that day. He was working in the shop. Go make that calf suck. So we went to the barn, and as soon as we got in the corral with her, she took after us and literally wanted to end our lives. Chased us right back up over the fence. So Rob and I looked at each other, and we tried to divide her attention. I opened the barn door. He got her to chase him. We tried to get her to chase him into the barn. We tried everything. Went back over to the shop and said to Dad, we can't get her in the barn. She's too mean. She just wants to kill us. And he said, you get back to that barn right now and you make that calf suck. So we drug our butts back over to the barn and went in there, and time again, that cow put us back up over the fence. Finally, we walked back over to the shop, and heads hanging, disappointed. I think I was probably 13 years old. Rob was, 4 years younger than me, and said, we can't do it, Dad, and he was mad. So he was gonna have to stop what he was doing and go back and help us get this cow in the barn. It was wet and muddy, so he took his cowboy boots and he had these rubber overshoes. I don't know, you guys remember rubber overshoes? Pulled them up over his boots, walked across the yard, didn't even take the time to buckle them, climbed over the corral fence, got into the pen with this cow, and she immediately put her head down and went 100 miles an hour straight for him. She got right to him, and Rob and I are watching from the fence. He puts her in a headlock. He's got her in a headlock, and they're going round and around the corral, and he's got her in a headlock, and he's going, you stupid cow, get in the barn, we gotta, and we're just watching all this, and all of a sudden, he goes down, and this cow kneels on his chest and starts rubbing him in the dirt. And we think he's gonna die. And so we jump off the fence, we run up to her, we distract her, get her off of him. He gets up, he comes back to the fence, we're all sitting up on the fence, he brushes himself off and he says, I had her right where I wanted her until I tripped on my overshoes. And we're like, sure you did. Sure you did. Had her right where you wanted her. But listen, it made me think of America today, because President Trump had America right where we wanted her. Right where we wanted her. And boy, have we tripped on our overshoes. Joe Biden has made us fall flat on our face. It is unbelievable to me, and we need to pick ourselves up and fix the damage that he's doing. There are two things in this country that will destroy us faster than anything else. And the first one is the Marxist indoctrination that they are teaching our children in our schools. That will destroy this country. I was the very first candidate in this entire country to sign on to the 1776 pledge. Dr. Ben Carson and I took on this challenge, recognizing that we needed to teach our kids true, honest history. That the 1619 Project, critical race theory, is hate, division, and it's not American. It's offensive. We do not have racism in our DNA in this country. We love each other, and everybody deserves to be treated equally. I need you all to go home and challenge every single candidate running for office to sign the 1776 pledge. Make them do it. Everyone who's running for office needs to embrace our honest history of America, an America that was formed for freedom. Number two, the second most dangerous thing that's happening is down at our southern border. A nation without borders is a nation without laws and is not a nation at all. So here's what I want to explain something to you. I was the very first governor that when Texas and Arizona asked for help, that sent my National Guard troops down there to help. Thank you. Thank you. And I want to explain to you why I sent National Guard. National Guard are the best, and our country deserves the best. They do missions like this all the time. You give them a mission, they're trained for it, they're equipped for it, they are ready, and they know how to complete that mission, and then come home doing an excellent job. I, in South Dakota, have had the top National Guard unit the last 3 years in a row in the United States of America. They literally are the very best that you have. And they will go and they will complete their mission. I won't shortchange my law enforcement right now. I just won't do it. I think it's irresponsible right now with what we see across the country to shortchange law enforcement. They're needed at home. They do their jobs. We send our guard because they're used to the war zone that they're going to see down there at the border. They're prepared and trained for it, and they can deal with it. So I'm thankful that the governor's asked, and if the federal government's going to fail to do their job, then governors are the ones who are going to have to step up and do it for them to protect this country. I need you to lead by example. South Dakota's been leading by example. When I ran for governor almost 3 years ago, I ran on the message that South Dakota could be an example to the nation. I had no idea it was going to happen during a pandemic. But we have to speak the truth as well. Now, South Dakota was the only state to never close a single business. The only state. We talk about rewriting history. Let's talk about rewriting history. We've got Republican governors across this country pretending they didn't shut down their states, that they didn't close their beaches, that they didn't mandate masks, that they didn't issue shelter in places. Now, I'm not picking fights with Republican governors. All I'm saying is that we need leaders with grit, that their first instinct is to make the right decision, that they don't backtrack and then try to fool you into the fact that they never made the wrong decision. So demand honesty from your leaders. Demand honesty from your leaders and make sure that every one of them is willing to make the tough decisions. South Dakota did not do any of those. We didn't mandate. We trusted our people, issued and told them that personal responsibility was the best answer. And this is a short rundown of what's happening in South Dakota right now. I have the least amount of hours lost by any worker in the entire state, least amount of wages lost by any worker in the state, the least amount of businesses closed in the entire nation in South Dakota. My unemployment rate is 2.8% in the state of South Dakota. I have the fastest growing GDP rate in the nation. Texas in 2020, last quarter, their GDP rate was 7.5%. South Dakota's 9.9% in our state. Thousands and thousands of people are moving to our state. And they're moving there not because we have beaches and not for our weather. I don't know, that's shocking. They're moving because they want to live somewhere where the government respects them. They want to be free, and they know they can do that in South Dakota. Hundreds of businesses are moving into our state. What we did in South Dakota is what conservatives have always said they believed. We just did it. And we proved that it works for families, it works for businesses, and it works for this country. So we will continue to make the tough decisions to make sure that we're an example and that it is a story and a testimony we can tell to the rest of the country. But I'm going to ask you for one thing. I'm going to tell you one quick story because I know I'm already out of time. Back in 1773, there was a young man named Nathan Hale. Now, Nathan Hale, I'm sure you remember him, graduated from Yale with honors. He had 5 older brothers that quickly, after that, signed up to fight for the Continental Army in the Revolutionary War. And just months after that, Nathan himself joined. It was interesting because at that time, General George Washington was leading the troops. And he was fighting for freedom in this country and to ensure that America could be the great country that it is today. When Nathan signed up, he was quickly promoted in the ranks. He was quickly recognized for his leadership, his character, his integrity, his willingness to step forward and do the tough jobs that nobody else wanted to do. Now, the British Army was winning. They were gaining momentum, and the Continental Army was losing, and General Washington was in a tough spot. He had learned that the British Army was going to be invading Manhattan quickly, and he needed to have inside information in order to think before they could act and stop and win that battle so that they could win the war. He gathered all of his troops together and stood in front of them, and he said, I need a volunteer. I need one person who would be willing to go undercover as a spy behind enemy lines and gather the intelligence that we need to stop the British Army when they invade Manhattan. Only one person stepped forward to volunteer for that mission, and it was Nathan Hale. He disguised himself as a Dutch school teacher, went behind enemy lines, quickly gathered information, was being incredibly effective when he was discovered. They say it was a British officer that maybe revealed his identity. Perhaps it was even his cousin who was still a British loyalist. Regardless, he was captured, brought before the enemy, and quickly sentenced to die by hanging. Historians today still write about Nathan Hale like this. They are incredibly impressed with his composure, how he kept his dignity in front of him throughout his sentencing, condemnation, and as he stood before those who would carry out his death. In fact, they say he never once compromised General Washington, never once gave up any information that would put the Continental Army or the Revolutionary War at risk. He kept his integrity, was honest, and did his job. In fact, they write that the very last words that he said was that I only regret that I have but one life to lose for my country. Listen, people, we have no idea what hard is. You just don't. We haven't done anything like those folks who've made this great country did. You need to do more. You need to do more. I don't think one person can save this country, but I think all of us have our part. I don't know. I don't know why I do what I do. I grew up dreaming of being a rancher, chasing cows and riding horses. My husband says to me all the time, he said, Christy, you always pick the hardest things to do. He said, there could be 4 choices in front of you, and you every time pick the hardest one. And I said, I know, but it's always the right one. Sorry. It's always the one that needs to be done. I'm going to ask all of you to do what needs to be done. Number 1, this country is addicted to being offended. We are offended by everything everybody says, and I just need you to get over yourselves, okay? Just get over yourselves. There are people that you quit talking to because they offended you, and you think they're too liberal, too left, too crazy, too insane, whatever, that you're not going to talk to them anymore. Get over yourself. Start having those conversations again, because that's how we win the hearts and minds of this country back. The second thing, and this is the last thing I'm going to say, I need you to wake up happy. You woke up this morning in the United States of America. You are better off. You are better off than 95% of the people in this world just because you woke up in this country. Be optimistic. Don't watch the news. It sucks. It really does. It's horrible. Be happy. People will be drawn to you by your optimism because we as conservatives are the only ones who really know what hope is. May God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America. Have a wonderful day.
We just had Governor Kristi Noem of South Dakota speaking to crowds in Dallas, Texas for CPAC Uncanceled 2021. Welcome to all who have just tuned in. President Trump will be speaking here today at 3:30 p.m. Central Time. That is 3:30 p.m. Central Time. So be sure to stay tuned. Be sure to hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Follow us on Rumble as well. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at RSB Network, as well on Getter at RSB Network. Be sure to give us likes and follows and stay updated with everything that we are doing, all of the Trump events that we will be going to. We will continue to bring you live, unedited coverage of all of these events and all of these events that President Donald Trump will be attending. So stay tuned. I would like to thank all of our viewers first and foremost for all of their support over all of these years and right now, for tuning in, for donating. All of you have been so supportive. We are so happy for you all. We're so happy to have all of you viewing and donating. If you would like to donate and help support us, you can go to our website at rsbnetwork.com/donate. That is rsbnetwork.com/donate. You can also donate through the mail as well at 1550 Opelika Road, spelled Opelika, 1550 Opelika Road, Suite 6, Bucks 344, Auburn, Alabama 36830.
From Club for Growth, David McIntosh.
Great big cpac thanks to Matt and Mercedes for putting on yet another great cpac. I'm David McIntosh, president of the Club for Growth. We are the largest conservative political machine in this country. We elect true champions to Congress, to the Senate, and to governors who will take back our country, save America, and let us continue to be the land of the free and the home of the brave. But today I am here to introduce, in a way, the next panel. It's a panel on the most important subject facing our nation today. What are our parents around this country doing to stop critical race theory from taking over our schools? What are we doing to stop them from taking over our corporations, taking over sports, even taking over the military? Martin Luther King had a dream that we would judge or be judged by the content of our character and not the color of our skin. I'm here to tell you, cpac and conservatives, we have a dream that we will continue to love our brothers and our sisters and not judge them by the color of their skin. But radical Marxists have taken over this movement they call critical race theory that shames our children, treats them differently and punishes them based on the color of their skin, and tells them in America, our country, our capitalist free markets, our Constitution are evil and irretrievable. They are wrong. America continues to be the greatest country in the world, the freest land, and Americans will fight to stop that radical ideology from taking over our schools, our companies, our sports, our military. Now, Club for Growth has a solution in the education department. We realize that if we change the way we fund our public schools, then parents will have the tools they need to stand up to the bureaucrats, the teachers' unions, the radical left. So we're going to spend the next 3 years doing everything we can to promote parental choice in education, send the money through the parents so that those school bureaucrats know they have to listen to them when they stop teaching our kids radical ideology that hates America. If you want to join us in that fight, go to clubforgrowth.org/join, sign up. We'll build an army, and we'll change the way America funds our education. But more importantly, we'll stand up and fight for freedom and the dream that Martin Luther King had, that we will truly be a colorblind nation, the freest land in the world, the greatest country ever. So now my job is to bring out the next panel. It's a group of men and women who are out there on the front lines fighting this critical race theory. So I ask you, give them your full attention, and when you leave, if you see you can join the fight in your community, with your schools, on your school board elections, whatever it takes, stand up for the truth, and God will bless you. Thank you. God bless you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Head of the Class. Why is the left committed to CRT when so many parents disagree? Please welcome your panel, activist She Van Fleet. From FlightForSchools.com, Ian Pryor. From CISD School Board, Hannah Smith. And your moderator, American Conservative Union Foundation's Heather Flick.
Hi, cpac Sunday. This is a panel of warriors. Attorney Ian Pryor is a former senior official at the Trump Department of Justice. He's CEO of Headwaters Media, and he's the executive director of FightForSchools.com, which you'll hear a lot more about in this panel. Hannah Smith is a religious liberty attorney. She clerks for both Justices Thomas and Alito. In addition to that, she's the mother of 4, and she was recently elected to a Dallas area school board with over 70% of the vote. Parents are paying attention, clearly, especially in Texas. She Van Fleet didn't want to become an activist, but she recognized CRT from her own experience as a student during China's Cultural Revolution. She's committed now to help Americans see what's happening in their own classrooms by sharing her own experiences that I think a lot of children aren't even taught about these days, the Cultural Revolution. So we look forward to hearing from She. She, I'm going to start for you. What's the left strategy with CRT? What was your own experience? Can you tell us a little bit about what it was like being a student in China during the Cultural Revolution?
Yes. We all know what CRT is. I'm here to introduce its twin brother. It's called CCT, and that's Mao's class conflict theory. They use the same strategy, is to divide people into opposing groups. One is oppressor, one is oppressed. And they share the same ancestor. That is the guy called Karl Marx. And both of them disguise themselves as something they are really not. CRT presented itself as an advocate for racial justice, CCT as the liberator of the oppressed from the oppression of feudalism, capitalism, and imperialism. One of the remarkable similarities between these two is CCT believe that you are guilty at birth. If you are born to parents who are categorized as the class enemy, you are too at birth. And CRT believes that if you're born white, you are inherently a racist, and you have white privilege no matter how poor you are. And both of them have the same goal, that is to divide, conquer, and control people. And what is cancel culture? Cancel culture is to cancel the culture of the oppressed. During the Cultural Revolution, we were instructed to destroy 4 old things: old thoughts, old tradition, old custom, and old habit. That is Chinese civilization. And they canceled it and replaced from something from the West, cultural Marxism. And what CRT is aiming at is to destroy the system. They call it systemic racism, institutional racism, and structural racism. What they are aiming at is to destroy the foundation of this country, that is the Western civilization, Christianity, and our Constitution.
You're exactly right. And I just want to add, can you imagine? Thank you so much for sharing your story. It's so inspirational to hear her talk because she's lived through this in China. Can you imagine the trauma that we're inflicting on our school-aged kids when we teach them that just because you're born white means that you are inherently a racist and that you're inherently an oppressor? You know, critical race theory takes its origin from critical theory. And critical theory is really a rejection of the Enlightenment. It's a rejection of reason. Critical theory says that we look through everything through the lens of power. Who are the oppressors and who are the oppressed? Well, critical race theory was born here in the United States in the 1970s at Harvard Law School. And critical race theory says that we look at race as the key factor in every human relationship. So if you are white, you're inherently an oppressor. If you are a person of color, you are inherently oppressed. Can you imagine the psychological trauma that we're inflicting on our school-aged kids by telling them they're inherently bad if they're born white, or if they're born a person of color, they're inherently a victim? That's exactly why we stood up and fought against critical race theory in our schools.
So this is a movement. She has tied it into what the communists in China did during the Cultural Revolution. We know this has been going on in America for a while. Ian, what are the other tie-ins here? We know that it's becoming an industry too, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
It's not just a movement,
it's
actually a business.
It's an $8 billion industry. And you know what happens is you'll get these schools and they'll bring in these equity consultants to come in and basically find the racism. And it's like bringing your car to the shop. I mean, who brings their car to the shop and leaves without getting, you know, oh, you gotta get your tires rotated, you gotta get your fluid changed, you gotta do this. Of course they're gonna find it. So, you know, I first learned about this in Loudoun County Public Schools when, you know, I attended a virtual school board and they talked about all of this this equity assessment that they did. And I wondered, how much did they pay for that? So I decided to FOIA the documents, the contract, the bills, and I found out that they paid $500,000 to this equity collaborative in 2019. Turns out they're still on contract for $625 an hour. And what kind of things are they doing? They're doing things like anonymous reporting portals. So in Loudoun County Public Schools, there's now an anonymous bias portal where students and parents can anonymously report other students for incidents of bias. And then you click through and it's, you know, some of the things are legitimate, but other things are not being inclusive. And then what do they do with that information? They give it to the equity office and then the equity ambassadors who get to have these discussions about students who have been anonymously reported and have no idea about that. So how could that go wrong in high school, where you can make anonymous reports on your friends for just about anything you want to do? There's no abuse potential in that one.
Well, and there's serious due process concerns with that as well. I mean, are kids getting their rights protected in that process?
So there's a huge industry of people who are making money off getting kids to hate themselves, hate their parents, hate their country, nationalize the education system.
Well, that's right. And the reason why we have local school boards is because we want the community to decide what values it wants its children to be learning in schools, right? That's why we elect people to represent our values on the school board. But these DEI audits, they come in and they try and nationalize our curriculum by making every school look exactly like every other school. And that's not what our federalist system contemplated when we set up local school boards.
CRT is getting such traction now in the media that now its proponents have shifted the way they've been marketing it, and now they're saying that we're making everything up. There is no CRT, right? This is all a boogeyman that we have made, the parents have made up to be able to get new laws passed in states to take over school boards, et cetera. It is real. You've all seen it. How do parents identify it? How do we counter the new message that this is just a figment of everybody's imagination?
Well, you know, I think that the key phrases they will use, they'll say equity, culturally responsive learning. Those are really the two big phrases that they like to use. Now, equity is not equality. Equity is equal results. So we're gonna tinker with policies to make sure that everybody ends up in the same place. It's anti-meritocracy, it's anti-liberalism.
It's anti-equality for all,
exactly.
right? It's anti-equality of opportunity.
To
it rejects equality of opportunity for equity of results.
But to a 10-year-old, the word equity sounds a lot like equality. I mean, it's very confusing and it's very deliberate from what we right?
I just want to say that everything that is happening in our school and in our country, I mean everything, happened during the Cultural Revolution. And during the Cultural Revolution, the students, and it's very important to know that the Cultural Revolution started in school, started in college campus, and spread to all over the country. And that's what we see here too. And everything like teaching the fake history. Here we teach 1619 in China. The 3,000 years Chinese history was reduced to class struggle between the oppressed and oppressor. And we banned books. We banned the whole Chinese classic literature. And here we start to see that. Tom Sawyer and Dr. Seuss are banned.
So I'll just give you a few more buzzwords that you can look for if you're trying to figure out if CRT is being backdoored into your school curriculum. So look for equity, as Ian said. Look for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Look for social emotional learning. Social emotional learning is now the equity lever in our schools. So social emotional learning started off as teaching kids about emotional resilience, how to have good behavior in class, but now it's turning into teaching kids how to realize their full self-identity. And that identity analysis looks at bias, implicit bias, all of those buzzwords, those are CRT. So look for culturally responsive teaching, look for cultural competence, cultural proficiency, look for white supremacy, white fragility, white bias, implicit bias. All of these terms are buzzwords that have their roots in critical race theory.
And keep an eye on the children too, right? I mean, I know people, I know parents whose children come home now and are depressed and look at their mother and they say, my teacher told me I'm a bad person and you're a bad person and that we shouldn't have what we have, and just because you work hard, you know, you're privileged that you got there to begin with. Parents need to talk to their children and really look for changes in attitude and behavior too, right? Because part of this is really to take down their self-esteem.
Well, that's exactly right. And, you know, I think critical race theory applied even out of the schools, in the community, when we're having these conversations. And this is really how I got involved in this. You know, I've been a lawyer for 10 years. I've been in politics for the 10 years after that. You know, I wrote an article about critical race theory in Loudoun County Public Schools in October of last year. And then in March, there was a private Facebook group that included 6 of our school board members and a bunch of, you know, radical leftist activists. And what they did was they decided to plot against parents that were speaking out against critical race theory. They wanted to infiltrate our groups, publicly expose us, hack our websites, and raise money to do it. And, you know, I've said this before, that was my Liam Neeson moment, where, you know, I said, I have a particular set of skills that I've acquired over a long career, skills that make me a nightmare for people like you.
But I just want to say that you don't have to have skills like Ian to get involved in this fight. We had an amazing community that was behind us that did all sorts of things. Open records requests. Learn how to use your state's open records laws. Ask the school district for information through open records requests. And that will arm you with facts that you can then use when you show up to give public comments at your school board meetings. Organize beforehand. Get your army together. Talk about who's going to talk about which topic. Draft talking points for them. Get everybody mobilized so they show up at the school board meetings and articulate the reason why CRT is so bad. Set up a Facebook group for your community so that you can educate each other, so that you can learn more and you can arm yourself with those facts to fight back. And also, we set up a political action committee in our town, and the PAC was really very influential in helping getting people organized into different committees, a legal committee, a communications committee, a grassroots neighborhood committee, a prayer team. You know, there's a lot of ways that you can get your community organized, but you have to have a strategic focus so that you can fight back.
Well, and that's the you know, kind of where I was going with that too, which is everyone here has a particular set of skills. Everyone in your community has a particular set of skills. We've got somebody, we call her the FOIA queen. Okay, and she FOIAs everything. Like all day, she's out there FOIAing things. We have people that, you know, just know who to talk to get folks to go door to door. We have another guy who just can read through all this stuff, break it down, put it all into a one-pager so that people can understand. There's everybody in your community that has those particular set of skills that you can use, that they can use to set up these kind of political action committees, to set up organizations, to really, because you're gonna need that. You're gonna need a team, you're gonna need a command staff, you're gonna need what I call the army of moms. And I've got an army of moms, and we've got an army of moms in Loudoun County that are literally out there all day, every day, fighting back against this school board.
I want to hear, because you gave a wonderful speech that sort of is what set you on this path, and it was something that you were compelled to do because of your concern for what was going on. There are a lot of people out there who think, I don't want to become a target, I don't want people to know who I am. Once you get out there and speak, you see how many other people appreciate you doing that and feel more motivated themselves to get involved because they can stand with people like you.
I just want to say that we won the Cold War, but we definitely did not defeat the communism. The communism is not only here in America, its infiltration is complete, especially in the educational system. Any Chinese that experienced the Cultural Revolution or had knowledge of Cultural Revolution can easily see what's happening here. It's a repeat. But sadly, too many Americans don't recognize it. They see the symptoms, they don't know what the disease. The disease is communism, is cultural Marxism. And that's very important. And as conservative, we need to educate ourselves. What is Cultural Revolution? What is communism? And I urge all the immigrants from China or from the communist countries who love this country to speak up, to share your stories. And I also urge conservatives, seek them out, encourage them, give them support, ask them to share the stories. And we need to educate Americans. I give you a quick example. There is, outside this ballroom, there is a sculpture of Mao. Mao was a mass murderer. Can you imagine someone put Hitler's statue there or Stalin's statue there? Mao killed more people than Stalin and Hitler together. And we have a statue here in the public space because we don't know the history. We need to teach the history. We need to tell the story. Yesterday I heard a lot about telling story. This is an important story. We need to tell this story.
Absolutely, and the teachers these days really are rewriting history. Anybody who didn't see Glenn Beck's speech last night, it was excellent. We really do all need to know our history, and we need to preserve the documents that teach what really happened in our country.
So can I just give a quick example of one thing that we found when we did our open records requests? People said, oh, we're not teaching CRT, critical race theory. That word is nowhere found in the Cultural Competence Action Plan. And we did an open records request, and we got the slide deck for an administrative retreat where all of our principals and executive directors in our entire district were taught about white fragility, white supremacy, white identity, implicit bias, intersectionality. And on one of the slides, it asked all of our employees